Welcome to the Exploring Mind podcast. We're so delighted to have Mr. Pratham Mittal with us.
Happy to be here.
Pratham is the founder of Masters Union. He's an educationalist. Other than that, he's an excellent human being. He has always a smile on his face and extremely insightful. Thank you, Pratham, so much for joining us here on the campus.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the hospitality. It's been fun so far.
Yeah, sure. Like with starting with any venture, you sort of identify problems which is deep rooted and something you personally feel.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what are some of the problems that you sort of saw in the Indian MBA space? Can you just give us a number?
No, so it's not just about the Indian space, and it's just not about the MBA space. I think it's about the education space across the world, right? If you think about it, all the industries, if you talk about banking or finance, or if you talk about manufacturing, if you talk about agriculture, if you talk about, even sort of televisions and all of these things have completely changed over the last 100 years and even over the last 2000 years, if you look at it, right? But education is something that's not changed even since like Socrates, etc., right? They also used to teach the same way that teaching happens today, where a teacher would come and stand in front of the class, deliver a lecture, students will take notes, and then after 3 or 4 months, there'll be an exam where students will be expected to remember and regurgitate that content out onto an examination sheet, right? That has not changed in 2000 years. And we know that it doesn't work. So that's really the need that I thought that, we need to work towards. Try to figure out an education system that actually works. Try to figure out an education system where students actually learn and not just, come to class. The front ones are listening, the back ones are sleeping. And then at the end of the day, just before the exam, 2 days, they'll sit with the books and all the lectures, etc. are forgotten. So we spend almost 80% of our time when we're in college during the daytime in class. But if you ask anyone on the street, someone who's been to college, ask them, what is the one thing that you remember most from your college times? It'll mostly be stuff from their hostel. It'll mostly be stuff they did on stage. Basically stuff they did outside the classroom and never inside the classroom. And I think that's a problem.
So just going about, you mentioned about learning. I think what you're trying to say is that there's experiential, and people say that people have different models. You learn from your mistakes or you learn by doing. There's like what the school education might be teaching us, that you give lectures and then you understand that and somehow you sort of inculcate that. What was the philosophy of learning, especially while designing Masters Union?
It was very simple. It's, you mentioned it yourself. It's just learning by doing. And we take a lot of inspiration from medical colleges because in a medical college, you learn from real doctors and you actually are doing OPD, which essentially means that you're seeing patients from year one itself, right? So you understand the problems. You do surgeries, probably you start assisting in surgeries in year 2, year 3. And by year 4, year 5, you're essentially like a full-time doctor inside a real hospital, right? So that's like, imagine if you were studying, hospitality in an actual hotel, how much more your learning will be. So that's really the method we wanted to adopt.
So just going about the fact that how do you teach business to people? And the second thing is, first of all, we see these top entrepreneurs. They mostly come from the background of engineering, finance, economics, some from the other, but not so much about MBAs. But it's very hypocritical, the fact that we teach, the name is in the business, but like there's not many business MBA entrepreneurs. Can you just give a bit more insight about why that is?
I'm not sure about the data. I think if you look at successful entrepreneurs, and the definition of successful can be anything, I would think that many of them, probably a majority of them, would have some sort of a post-grad education. And most of it would be MBA. That would be my guess. However, what I would say is that what you have studied is completely relevant to what, like entrepreneurship actually demands. So when you start a company, what you need to be good at is like managing people. What you need to be good at is managing egos. What you have to be good at is innovation. What you have to be good at is, having a lot of grit and not giving up, right? None of these things are actually taught in an MBA or an undergrad program, right? Engineering or otherwise. What entrepreneurship needs is like, I'm sure like in the future we'll identify like this DNA that like probably some entrepreneurs have that grants them these 4 things. But I think that's nothing to do with education.
I think even we at Plaksha, you sort of mentioned team building and working in a team, managing egos, managing conflicts. So we had those teams, right? A lot of our assignments are given in teams and you have to work in teams. And then first of all, I thought I could work in teams because it was like, okay, I'm good at everything. I could be good at working in teams as well. But like when you start working in teams, you feel that, okay, everyone's so different. It's like your thought process doesn't just resonates with almost everyone, which you automatically assume. And then how do you even manage it? It just is so counterintuitive. And it is like something that could make or break the project. Is something even how no matter how smart you are, but the fact that how well you manage in a team, how well you're communicating in a team, and that never really came about me having a classroom. I think it just came about me reflecting on my own experiences and then thinking about what can I do differently, asking from my mentors about what
making mistakes and just improving, right? Yeah, I think that's also learned by doing, right? So if you even want to like learn business, I think the best way to learn business is actually like go and start building something. Could be something as stupid as like selling golgappas, right? But in that process, you'll make mistakes, and I think that's the only way to learn business. Or teamwork.
Yeah.
Or giving a slide presentation.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all.
You did your MBA in the US.
No, I did my undergrad.
You did your undergrad in the US. Just walk us through your college experience, some of the mistakes that you did, which sort of went with you.
No, lots of them. Yeah. So I think like we had 40 courses as part of our undergrad program. I'm sure you also have something similar, right? 40 credits, 40 courses, and most of the courses were a lot like what I told you in the beginning, right? Where someone's coming in front of us, they're giving a lecture.
Yeah.
We have quizzes every now and then there's an exam, midterm, end term, all of that.
Yeah.
But there were a few courses that took education like to a different depth altogether. So there's one course which was about, it was like an early course in accounting, where we were asked to audit the books of a nearby restaurant, right? We were not taught any accounting before that. They just told us, hey, listen, there are these 5-10 YouTube videos, watch these YouTube videos, and then go and do this audit, right? And create a report in this format and submit that report to us. And the teacher would then check the audit, whether the audit was, done properly. And as we were doing that audit throughout the term, we learned accounting by ourselves, right? So what that class or what that professor actually did to us was that he did not have to teach us anything. He essentially gave us a task. And in the pursuit of completing that task, we learned a new skill, right? And then I started noticing a trend that the highest rated courses, and in my college, you could actually see like the ratings of each course going back like tens of years, right? If you see all the highest rated courses, they were the ones where the teacher actually wasn't teaching. He was or she was just assigning a task. You do that task, you'll automatically learn the skill, right? So there was another course where we were asked to essentially help local government in making a policy around food stamps. So in the US, if you make less money or if you're below poverty line, then you're given food stamps, which are these tokens which you can only use to purchase food. They don't believe in giving dollars because then you might misuse those dollars. So they give you these tokens, these tickets that you can only use to buy food. Now, what they wanted us to do was figure out whether that token money that was given and what you could buy with it was enough to sustain a proper lifestyle. And what we realized was that we actually had to live on food stamps for 2 months ourselves as students. We were actually living the education. So, there were these courses that really made us think a lot, made us, peel the onion, as I was talking about earlier. And I think that is what has stuck with me.
You also mentioned that there was a huge shock when you went to the US and even just going to the Zoom school. Walk us through that about how was it, and then how did it sort of transform you as a person?
Education in the US was very different, right? In school, I was doing ICSE and then I did IB, thankfully. But generally, the Indian education system, especially the school level, does not make you write a lot, right? They only make you like remember stuff, or it's mostly around memorization. But when I did IB, or when I went to school in the US or college in the US, what I started realizing was that I'm writing a lot more, and as I wrote a lot more, we made mistakes. But as your writing improves, everything improves. What happens is you write better emails, right? And when you write better emails, you get better response rates. As you get better response rates on LinkedIn, you get better jobs. You get better connects, like the way you reached out to me, right? Such a well-written email.
Thanks.
The thing is, like a lot of our Indian peers, Indian students, are not taught how to write, right? The second thing is empathy. I think we are never taught how to think from the other person's perspective. We're always taught to get the answer right, right? When you're writing an essay, when you're writing a composition, when you're writing a book, when you're writing a chapter, you're always thinking about who the reader is and how will that reader perceive what I am writing.
Yeah.
We are never taught that in schools and colleges in India. So I think writing is the one thing that I think was something I learned when I went to the US. And that was also a shock because first few times I did not do a very good job at writing. I used to use these like dot, 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 dot. You know what I mean? Like those ellipses at the end of the sentences just because I did not know how to end sentences.
Yeah. Long answers for long questions. Long
questions. I used to use the thesaurus to like make the answers look a little bit more sophisticated, all of that. I remember writing my college essay. Do you guys have to write essays here?
We have to write essays. It's the college application similar to the US.
Similar to the US, right? Yeah. So, and that college essay that I had written was probably the first essay I had written, like in my life, which did not depend on like me memorizing something from a
Was it weird
book.
To write some like, just thinking about writing essays for your application?
Yeah, so like I remember one of the application questions at Penn for me was like, why is pi so difficult? That was the topic. That means nothing, right? So it's up to you how you want to then sort of break that statement down and come up with a response. It actually means nothing. There was another option which was, why does my table creak? Figure out what this means, interpret it the way you want to interpret it, and write something about it, right? Most Indian students would get stumped on that.
Yeah. So just going about, how did you, first of all, how did your professors reacted to your writings? That's something that I'm interested in initially.
I think like they know that you're coming from a different education system and that you'll have certain skills. Like my math was better than anybody else's, right? My computer science, like data structures, all of that was better than anyone else's. But my English wasn't, or my written expression wasn't. And, the professors were like happy to help. The one thing in colleges, in the US, and I'm sure it's in India as well, is that colleges, like professors take a lot of ownership, right? Till the time the last student doesn't understand, like they will keep making sure, like, they'll email you, they'll follow up, they'll call you to their office hours, they'll ask you to take extra classes, but they'll make sure you learn. But they were very supportive, I think.
You also started out in college, right? You started outgrowing college as a college project. Tell us more about it. How did it went on to sort of become a real venture?
So it was actually a class project that was given to me and Randy, who was my business partner eventually, still work together. And that class project was something, okay, so I'll tell you the full story.
Yeah, sure.
It was very interesting. There's a professor called Adam Grant. He's a very popular professor. And he gives you these like small projects in class where he would bring the stakeholders from the industry as well, right? So you have to essentially do the projects with the stakeholders. And so one of the stakeholders that he brought was a local newspaper. And then me and Randy were paired to work on a project for that local newspaper. And, we built that small project. It was a small, tool. I won't go into the details. It was basically a website tool for them. We built that tool maybe in like a couple of days and we gave it to the stakeholder and we said, hey, listen, this is done. He's like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted. Let me know where to send the check. And we are like, wait.
What's the check?
Like, what check? I mean, like, this was just a class. I mean, we'll not say no, but we thought this was just a class project. So they sent us a check. They said, okay, just make these 2-3 improvements. So we made those 2-3 improvements. And the check came. And then, I think like a month later, they reached out to us again saying that, hey, listen, like, can you add these 5-6 as well? And, we're happy to prepay you. And I think they prepaid us another like $10,000-$20,000. And we built that, new feature or set of features. And then just one thing led to another. That project became a product. The product became a company. And then, we built a team, hired more people. But we didn't drop out. We were still in college. And as soon as we finished college, we went on it full time. Started doing, ads, started running ads on Facebook, Google, started experimenting with all of those things and made a lot of mistakes, right? Made a lot of mistakes. In the first 4 years was just like mistake after mistake after mistake. But by the end of it, we had tried everything, like we had tried sales, we had tried marketing, we had tried developing software ourselves, we had tried product management ourselves, we had tried, we got into some financial bunga also because, we didn't know compliances. And what we realized is that none of these things that are so important to running a business were taught even at a place like University of Pennsylvania, which has the Wharton School, right? So we actually had to make all of those mistakes by ourselves and then really learn.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because we all have college projects in us and people do amazing in the college projects. But one thing we sort of often fail to see is that college projects do not venture into the real world, or they just are not able to transcend beyond that. They're just limited to the competitions. what did you do differently? Which, first of all, I saw that you're extremely enthusiastic about it. But other than that, what do you think you did differently, which made it into a real project apart from a college one?
Yeah.
Was it the check that you got it?
Yes, exactly. I think it was the money.
Yeah.
Right. There's some validation that what you're doing is worth something to somebody else and not just to yourself. So as soon as we got the check, we are like, hey, like this is serious. This is real. This could be something big. So let's work on a little bit more. Let's work on a little bit more. I think that's why we ended up doing it full time after that. Otherwise, I think we would have left it in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's another thing, right? Which is, I think our parents were very supportive. Our professors were very supportive. In the US at the time, a lot of fundraising was happening. So like that entire ecosystem was getting built. Startups were like looked at with a lot of excitement. All of like we used to be written about in our college newspaper.
Yeah.
And that like inflated our egos a little bit more, you know. So I think the entire ecosystem really supported entrepreneurial culture.
Yeah.
So.
So I saw the undergraduate curriculum that you had at Masters Union, and that was very interesting. The first year, I think it's panning out from the same thing. The first Paycheck challenge.
Yeah.
So explain us a bit more about it, and what was the philosophy behind designing the undergraduate program?
No, it's the same thing, right? Like learning by doing. But the only thing that happens in an undergrad program is that, you know, you learn for 4 years.
Yeah.
And you get to apply whatever you've learned after 4 years. Now, what that does to you is that, you know, whatever you've learned, you know, year 1, year 2, you basically forget by the time you're in the industry. And this is a problem that we see as recruiters ourselves, that, hey, listen, you know, like, sometimes students have forgotten because the way they were taught was, you know, to memorize. So one thing that we have done is that, you know, our year is divided into 4 quarters, and each alternate quarter is an out-class quarter. I don't know if you realize that, right? So the first quarter, you have to take classes.
Yeah.
But the second quarter, you don't take any classes. You just apply those learnings in an internship, right? Then third quarter, you come back to classes. Then fourth quarter, you go back into the industry and apply those learnings from third quarter. So like this, every alternate quarter is outclass. And that is something that has been written about a lot in research done at other business schools. But those business schools themselves have not used that research. So we thought, you know, this is so obvious. Let's just do it. And you know, our university partner, which is University of Delhi, was like very supportive, and so now we are doing that.
But why do you think like the most prestigious business schools do fail to do this and do implement like learning by doing? What is the bottleneck that comes?
Yeah, I think there's no incentive, right? I mean, like the good business schools are good business schools. They're ranked highly. Students line up to join those business schools. So the business school professors are like, hey, listen, like, why fix something that is not broken, right? So that's the thing is the number of people who want a good education is so many more than the number of seats in good colleges, right? Like for like for 900 class, I think probably 20,000 people apply. At Stanford, like 40,000 people apply. Probably at Plaksha as well, like thousands of people apply for those 90, 80 spots. So I think a lot of the universities don't feel that it's in their urgent business to change the entire pedagogical process, right? And so that's why you need an alternative university or an institute to come in and try that. Because when we started up, we had no history, we had no legacy, nobody knew about us. We didn't really have any large name founders as such. So we had to survive on the basis of our delivery, right? The classes had to be that interesting, the placements had to be that great. So we didn't have any legacy that we could back on. And that's why we had to try and figure out, you know, what actually leads to learning and teaching.
Yeah. I mean, just talking about placements, it's been on record that Masters have better placements than I am. And which makes me to the point that you know exactly what goes on into producing such great talent. Why do you think most of the Indian graduates are not up to that mark? Where do Indian graduates fall short of?
Yeah, so you have to look at a job that you want. So first of all, I think like more people need to be job creators. But let's talk about placements for now, since your question was focused on placements, right? I think like if I want, let's say, a product management job, right? I have to figure out what are the skills that I need to be able to do well in that job. First to how to crack that job and then to do well in that job. Now, the thing is that no one actually sits down. First of all, nobody knows what they want to do. Right? They said, oh, I want a good job, I want a good brand. But what do you want to do in that company? First of all, people don't think enough about that. Because in India, we are trained to think about large brands, Amazon, Google, Facebook. What are you doing in those companies? That's also a question. So first, what we make our students do is figure out what is the role that they want to do in what kind of a company. That's number one. Number two, figure out what are the actual skills required to do well in that job. So if it's product management, if it's data science, let's break it down into tangible skills. Let it not be that, hey, listen, just because I have a 4.0 GPA, I'm going to do good in this job. Let's not go with that mindset.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what are the skills necessary. So let's break down those skills. And that's number two. Number three is that when you test people on those skills, don't test on their memorization skills, right? Test on how good they actually are in executing those skills, right? So we have to change the examination system. We have to award and we have to reward students on things that actually matter, right? Teach divide dx, but at the end of the day, if it's not going to get used while you're designing an airplane, then don't test on it now because you're testing the wrong thing. So you have to change the system a little bit. And that's when you can actually make sure that someone who's sitting in a product management interview will crack the product management interview because you've trained them for the role.
Yeah.
Right. What happens right now in, like, let's say a BCom college or let's say even in some engineering schools is that the teachers and the institutions are interested in covering the syllabus with absolutely no thought on as to how that syllabus actually creates skills and are those skills even necessary in the industry. Like, I mean, in BCom, to be honest, I've seen this in many BCom colleges. They're still making students like maintain those ledger registers. I don't know if you know registers. And have you seen those like registers and ledgers where the books of accounts are maintained?
Yeah. My father is a CSO. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so you have seen, right?
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, like, you probably see your father working on the computer a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
On Tally or something.
On Tally, etc. Exactly. So everything has become digitized. But guess how many BCom schools actually teach Tally? Probably none. Including the best BCom schools in the country don't actually teach Tally. Right? So then you can't complain after that, hey, listen, my students are not getting jobs because you haven't trained them in the actual skills that are necessary. You're still making them maintain registers, draw lines and all of that. What's the point of that?
So other than that, what are some skills that we can be, first of all, I think getting good jobs, being a good entrepreneur is just about creating value. How college students can have certain skills which can create value once they go out of this contained world.
So I think let's talk about like entrepreneurship a little bit, right? I think the best way to create value is not to look for a job, is to actually go and build a company. Today, it is so easy to start a company. You do not need any investment. You do not need a lot of like big teams. All you need is idea. All you need is some zeal. And all you need is like some basic skills to build a website, to build a no-code app, to be able to run your campaigns on Instagram or WhatsApp. You do not need anything more than that, right? And you do not need an investment. You don't need a seed check until quite later. So I think it's so easy to build a company today that to create value after you graduate, the best thing to do is in your final year or even in your pre-final year, start thinking about, what is that you want to build. Out of 10 ideas that will start getting built, probably 9 will die. But that one that will sustain will create so much value that it will more than cover up for the other 9. So, and I mean value in terms of like just value addition to the world, right? So that's how I think about, if you really want to create value, just for example, like, from one of our first cohort, we were talking about Dharmil and Bullspree. When he graduated from the next cohort, he actually hired his juniors. Yeah. Right. And that's so much value created. Think about it, right?
And that's also so cool. Like you're on the other side of the table.
Yeah, suddenly. Yeah.
Just going about you.
And all it took was 6 months, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what happened was Bullspree started as a college project, right? They, in fact, I think they won the campus business plan challenge or the hackathon.
Just more about what is this business plan challenge?
Oh yeah, I mean, so most colleges have this, right? Today. Yeah. Ours is slightly different, where you actually have to bid on your classmates to get them in your team.
It's not the professors who are doing that.
No. It's students who are doing it, right? And students have to build these teams by bidding on their teammates. They build the teams and then they have to work on a new idea that they haven't worked on before. And for 24 to 48 hours, they'll have to sit, hack that idea up, release it. And it has to be in a real working condition. It'll be audited, it'll be checked, all of that, right? So Bullspree actually came first in one of those competitions. And the team that came last in that competition also ended up, by the way, raising funds later on. A team called 8 Network. It's run by a guy called Mohit. So my point is that this was probably in the 8th or 9th month of the 12-month program. And once they graduated, it took them 6 months. That's it. To raise like $1 million check each. They both raised $1 million check each. And both of them came back next year to recruit students, right? 6 months. That's all they had to basically push their placements away for, right? 6 months.
And what is the biggest challenge of starting someone? Is it what must you do to sort of decrease that momentum in starting out?
I think we spoke about validation. Like if you're working on something, if somebody comes and validates, that could be a customer coming and saying, I want this. It could be an investor coming saying, and I want to invest in this. Or it could be just be like your seniors or your faculty saying, hey, listen, continue doing it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Just continue doing. That's all the impetus you need in the beginning to, see your idea through. So at Masters Union, what we say is that, hey, listen, we'll give you academic credit for this. Right. So if you start building a company and if you hit certain milestones, here's academic credit for it. Right. So if you get an A grade, then obviously you'll feel, hey, listen, I did something right. Someone feels that there is value in what I'm doing. Then in term 2, we'll actually ask you to get a few customers. In term 3, we'll actually ask you to get yourself a PR article written about. Right. So in each term, we are given some milestones, and slowly, eventually, you progress on those milestones and you see that what you started off as an idea is actually becoming something now, right? By the time you graduate, you actually have a few set of customers. You actually have revenue in the bank. It could be loss making or profit making, doesn't matter, but at least you moved the needle, right? And I think that really reduces the friction of starting up. The other thing is that everyone around you is also starting up. So you don't feel the social pressure of, placements, and you don't feel the social pressure of grades because everyone's in the same boat.
You had a business in the US and now you're in India. What is the difference between working in India and the US? How is the mindset of people different there?
I think when it comes to work, India has some strengths and US has some strengths. And India has some weaknesses, US has some weaknesses. The biggest strength in the US is that when people are working, right, 9 to 5 or whatever it is that they're working during the week, they will give in their 100% every day. They'll not waste time. They'll not look around. They'll not go gossip. They'll not spend extra time at lunch. They will be true and sincere towards their job. In India, I genuinely feel that a lot of us take our work week for granted, right? We slack. We are not 100% there. We are talking to our spouses sometimes on the phone. We are walking around just aimlessly. We go to the bathroom. We spend extra time on our phones, right? So people are not as sincere, I feel. I wouldn't generalize, but I think definitely a higher percentage of Americans are more sincere during the work week, and a lower percentage of Indians as compared to America are as sincere. However, when it comes to, and just this is an example, when it comes to working over the weekend or working in the evenings, if I were to call someone in the US, and it's actually happened with me where I called somebody from my team because something was broken for one of our clients, I think it was a Saturday evening, 6, 7 p.m. My American team member, he refused. He said, no, like I can't come to the computer right now. I don't care if it's your biggest customer. And he actually said those many words. I don't care if it's your biggest customer. I'm on a date right now. I'm not going to come. Right? That will never happen in India. I think in India, the strength that we have is that people work with some level of emotion, right? They're attached to the company. They're attached to their manager more than just a contract. So strengths and weaknesses. I enjoy working in India a little bit more than the US.
A bit controversial question, but your father started out LPO. Was that an unfair advantage for you going about your career and starting Masters Union? And the second part of it, how do students realize their own unfair advantage and get it to their use?
No, definitely I have an unfair advantage because I think I have a mentor in my dad who has made a lot of the mistakes in the same industry. We are targeting a very different audience. So, some of the lessons come in handy, some don't. But definitely a huge unfair advantage I have. And I think that is the founder market fit concept, right? Where if you're starting a company, are you the best person to start that company? That's a question that every investor will ask. And if you are, then you have an unfair advantage. So I think for students who are just starting up, I don't think they can have an unfair advantage as such. Think about it, right? In terms of like industry knowledge, because they haven't worked in any industry. But what you can have is some sort of a strength in you that is required in that industry. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you are a founder who is very active in student government, who is very active in, running clubs and societies and colleges, right? Now you have a certain strength, which is working with people.
Yeah.
You've probably raised sponsorships. You've probably gotten speakers on campus.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of sales, right? So you have a strength, which is sales. Now, when you're looking for a job or when you're looking to start a company, you should think about starting a company or doing a job that requires selling, right? That requires sales. And that's how you leverage your unfair advantage.
Yeah.
You will not know a lot about a specific industry, but that doesn't matter sometimes. If, let's say, you are someone who's introverted, who's not very comfortable speaking to people, right? Who's not very out there, but has a skill when it comes to, just like slogging it out on a computer like 10 hours straight, then go ahead, start a tech company, right? And focus yourself on building like the best product. Like some of the best tech companies are founded by people who are very introverted otherwise. So I think that's how you can leverage your strengths.
Yeah. I mean, so just in general, going about that, how do college students even identify what areas do they work on? Like, suppose if I'm interested in sales, I would have never known if I'm fear of being rejected, right?
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to a college student to try out different things and first of all understand once they go out into the real world, the experiences that they've done in the college?
No, so I don't think you have to think so much, right? So college will give you so many opportunities, right? To build a club.
Yeah.
To run a club. To host a podcast.
Yeah.
To help in the, cafeteria. College will give you so many opportunities. The thing is that 90% of the students, and I don't know if it's true here, but at least it was true in my college, 90% of the students will not take those opportunities. Right? So if you take and make use of all of those opportunities, you will figure out something that excites you the most. Right? And then it's just about self-reflection and saying that, hey, listen, I did really well at this. So it happened with me, I'll tell you.
Sure.
In the very first year, I was part of this play at my college, right? And I did not perform as part of the play. I was a producer.
You were a producer.
I was a producer.
Did you produce before?
No, I hadn't produced before. I was doing it for the first time.
What made you sign up for this?
So basically, I wanted to be part of the play.
Okay.
So, I interviewed, there were some seniors who were running the entire organization. And I interviewed and they said, hey, listen, like, why do you want to be part? I was like, I want to learn organization. I want to learn this, that. They're like, okay, so perfect. We'll get back to you. 2 weeks later, I get a message saying that, oh, you'll be the producer of the show. So they saw something in me. I don't know what it was, but I became the producer. And as I was producing that show, what I realized was that I was doing a good job. For the last 2 years, the show had not been selling out. My time, the show sold out. I did something right. So clearly, I realized that I'm good at sales. Right. As I was doing it, I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't think it was like work. I remember even bunking classes to do selling tickets on the street. And I realized I'm loving that experience. So that's when I realized. But at the same time, I was also in the swimming team.
Oh.
Okay. And I took that opportunity because I thought I learned swimming more. They had the best trainers in the world there. But I used to hate it. Like in the morning, they would call us at 6 a.m. And I would think it would be like an extra, effort to go. We had to maintain a proper diet, and I would always bunk that diet. We had to have like some 18, 19 eggs throughout the day. I would have like 3. I just realized I did not like it. Even though in my high school time, I was a great swimmer, right? But I was a good swimmer. I should not call it great. But in college, I hated that experience. So I realized what I hate and what I like. Right? And then I just played on my strengths after that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's it for the today, but like it was really insightful talking to you about all of the stuff and really insightful as well. A lot of things came out and thank you so much for having this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.